So I had a great segue before, and then we got off on a tangent. All the stuff on Rogue
That
Matter
wasn't
right
that great
now
a
is
segue
free
then.
to read. It'll be free to read through the end of the year.
You want a segue?
At some point, user accounts will have to be created, but that's okay. And you can right now get issue 2, a preview of MacBryde and Grum. Steve, tell the folks out there about MacBryde and Grum.
Like what? Like a quick synopsis? That kind of tell them about, or
Oh yeah, tell them about the
because
the book.
they can
Look,
go
we
they can
show
go.
the cover. Why would people want to read this wonderfully crafted?
Well, hopefully they read the first one and enjoyed it. So that would make them, I would think, make them automatically want to go read another issue. But so yeah, it's a new adventure with our two favorite detective types, and they get involved in what seems like a fairly innocuous, originally missing persons case, which then doesn't really materialize. So they think, oh, well, everything's over. And then something happens to draw them in, and then things kind of go a little sideways. So, and it sets up, it's going to be a 2-issue story. So issue 2 is the first half of, which will be obviously finished in issue 3, and issues.
So you'd say a 2-parter.
It is a 2-parter, and the following 2 parts, issues 4 and 5, are already written in the can, as they like to say. And
yes, I like it, using the lingo.
They sort of actually even continue on. They attach peripherally to this story, so there are little threads going out all over the place as I'm building this. So hopefully people will come back, like it, and we keep expanding the world and adding new characters, and it's a lot of fun stuff going on. I started writing another issue on the flight out here, so I've got about another diverse 10 or 12 pages of that already scripted, and that would be issue 6. And I've got the beats for the rest of the story all hammered out. So now it's just a matter of actually, fleshing them out and doing it. So
you do
the
majority of your writing on flights, right? Like that's
my thing, man. I'm telling you, after I finished the next 4 issues of MacBryde and Grum, and then I wrote a little short 6-page, a little 8-page sort of like background mini story, which will see the light of day somewhere, which ties into issues 4 and 5. Yeah. I needed a little palate cleanser, so I'm like, I looked through my idea notebook, and yes, that's correct, Aaron. Worst place to draw, other than the backseat of a car. Same kind of thing.
That actually just depends on how cooperative your aisle mate is. If you sit next to them and you hook up our table,
you start hitting turbulence and stuff. It's same kind of problem. It's like
it's just a little India ink. I'm sorry about your shirt.
But yeah, so I needed a little palate cleanser. So I wrote a short horror story, which I've submitted to another company to check out. A 22-pager. What did you say? There are other companies? What?
There are other companies.
So yeah, I wrote a quick 22-page horror story based on an idea I've had a number of years ago, and so I'm just waiting to hear back on thoughts on that. But then I've had a bunch of ideas in the last few weeks.
It's because you've been taking so many flights. That's why.
Well, not only that, but this is just stuff that pops into my head, or I'm doing something and I think, oh, that'd be a good kind of core idea to build a story around. So I was able to scribble down some stuff, and because I've had a couple of I don't want to call them false starts, but I've had a couple of starts on this 6th issue where I thought I had a good idea, but then I kind of got 8 or 10 pages in and I was like, okay, now what? And so I'm like, all right, I gotta kind of come back and readdress this. So
Mhm.
this one I started, I pulled in 2 other outside ideas and kind of combined them. And then it's a case of where on the flight, and I started kind of dropping out the beats of the story, and it all just kind of gelled. It's a weird thing when it happens. As fellow creators, I think will be able to understand exactly what I'm talking about. But
Yeah.
it's like in some stories you'll be going along and you think you have it down, but you'll hit a point in it and you'll be like, oh crap, so what's next now from here? And how do I know
Dude,
where I
that is
need
the
to
wor-
get. I know where I need
that
to
is
get,
the
and I
biggest
can't
fear.
get there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is the biggest fear, right? Like you're staring on a cliff and you have to jump the cliff. And
Yeah,
there's
or
just
it's
nothing
like,
at the bottom.
okay, so now it's a 13-page story instead of what should be a
Right.
normal length story. It's like, I need
Yeah.
another 6 pages in here.
I did that
Luckily,
recently, actually.
my issue tends to be, because I don't write in what I consider to be especially in comic form, what I consider to be a normal, what's
Mhm.
probably a normal comic book style, which is you kind of plan things out, you work things out, and you kind of write to a page count you try and hit that page count.
Sure.
I just start writing and I go. I very rarely, other than the beats of the story, I just go, and however many pages it ends up at, it just sort of ends up at. And then I have to try and work back if I want to try and shift page count, if I can.
Yeah.
I've been really lucky on the MacBryde and Grum stuff because it's all kind of landed in the right spot lengthwise.
Yeah.
And it's funny, the next 2 2-part stories were both written as 48-page single issues.
Right.
And again, once we decided to split them into the 24-page issues, again, in both stories, I got super lucky. And at the 24-page mark, there was a logical break to make where it made sense to stop it and do another issue. So I continue on and hope that I keep having that kind of luck writing, but I know that, logically that's probably not going to hold.
Just keep boarding those planes, and then you'll be fine.
And it's funny. Our boss, when I first, because there was a long time between writing issue 2 after issue 1.
Mhm.
We talked about that. It's hard that, because we had talked about getting a story out and getting it done and all that. And I had said, I think writing a second issue is much harder than writing your first, because you might have a good idea once and then you do it and then people like it and want more. And now you're like, okay, now what?
I think after this, I think it. And the way MacBryde and Grum is framed, because it's a single issue and it really is a self-contained single issue.
Yeah.
You've essentially told the story and you've kind of introduced this world, so you're kind of happy at that point. I find second issues, if it's part of like a series, like a 4-issue series, are way easier to write. But then, like, because that first issue, my ideas tend to be like the stuff that I'm going to show in the second or third issue. Like Hassan and I worked on a book called Epicenter, and quite frankly, the actual idea, doesn't happen until like the third issue. I look back on this right now and I'm like, you know what? I have to write this better, or I have to figure out how to write better, so that I'm not just I'm not just coming up with something to get to this big idea that I had. So it's I think it can go either way with different, depending on the situation. This is a question for the group, because you guys are all writers. Do you guys ever dream of stories and then like wake up and like have it, like you have to like write it down?
For me personally, I sleep very little, so my body tends to deep sleep when I am sleeping. Okay. So I don't often remember my dreams, but I do have dreams that I wake up and like, man, what a great idea that is to fit into something somewhere, and then 15 minutes later, I've lost 2/3 of it, and I'm like, nah.
Hi guys, Mike Dolce here from the Rogue Wav Podcast. If you like this video, please feel free to like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. It really helps us out. Leave a comment, let us know what you'd like to see in future episodes, and tune in every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, for a brand new episode of the Rogue Wav Podcast.